Today is May 22nd, 2008. My name is Rosalind Benjet. We're here with James Alexander and his wife Rosalind Alexander to take the oral history of Mr. Alexander. Our videographer is Ruth Andrus. Jimmy, tell me about your family.
What do you want to know?
Where you were born in Cleveland.
Yeah.
How did your family get to Cleveland?
Well, my grandfather got to Cleveland from Akron.
Okay, and before...
I don't know how he got to Akron. I have no idea.
You don't know. Do you know anything about where they came from in Europe?
Yeah, he came from Austria-Hungary. I've tried to do some research on it, more or less unsuccessfully, but I think it was from the city of Košice, but that's sort of guesswork as best I can tell. It was a part of Austria-Hungary that is probably now Slovakia.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any idea when they came to the States?
I would say probably around 1880.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find them in the 1880 census, but I found some record of them a little later than that. As you know, the 1890 census was burned. We don't have an 1890 census.
And so your parents were born in this country?
Yeah, my mother was born in Dayton, Ohio, and my dad was born in Akron, Ohio.
Mm-hmm. And what caused them to go from Akron to Cleveland?
Well, I really don't know, but my dad had an older brother who was killed. As I understand it, he fell off a wagon, and I think that kind of upset them. They tell me, I don't know if it's true or not, my grandmother's hair turned white instantaneously. And I think he had some friends in Cleveland. Cleveland was a big city for Hungarians of all kinds. One of the largest Hungarian communities in the world.
Right. So they moved to Cleveland before you were born?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was before I was born. It was more formative. I would say they moved to Cleveland right around the turn of the century.
Right. And what did your father do for a living in Cleveland?
He was a pharmacist. He owned a store. In fact, at one time he owned 3 stores. Louder?
Did you have siblings or an only child?
Only child.
And what was Cleveland like when you were a child?
Cleveland was the 5th largest city in the United States. It was also called the Forest City because it had so many trees. There's a lot of business enterprises that are still called Forest City this or Forest City that. I don't remember. We lived in the suburb of Cleveland Heights, which is, I was born in 1923, and Cleveland Heights became a city in 1922. And it was just evolving.
And as a child, did your family celebrate Jewish holidays or commemorate any kind of Jewish customs?
Not to a great extent. When my dad's parents were alive, they celebrated how they went over there for Seder. My grandfather was active in an Orthodox congregation called Benjet, which is a Hungarian congregation.
And You went to school in Cleveland.
I went to school in Cleveland.
What kind of activities were you interested in as a child?
Well, I built roads.
Built roads?
Well, not exactly, but we appropriated cement from various projects
Mm-hmm.
and built little roadways for tricycles.
Ah. I'm sure your parents were not happy about that in their yard.
No, it was not in their yard, it was another neighbor's yard.
Of course. And how about high school? Did you go to high school also in Cleveland?
Yeah, I went to elementary school, I went to junior high school, and I went to high school.
Mm-hmm.
We had a very good high school. I either rode a bicycle or walked to all those places.
Mm-hmm.
They had no school buses.
Right. And what were your interests by the time you got to high school? No more road building, right?
What was I involved in? I don't know. When I was in high school, I was in a club called the Student Discussion Club. I was in the Council on World Affairs. We had a mock League of Nations, and I represented Germany.
Mm-hmm.
We had quite a few Jewish people in the neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
in high school.
Right. Did you attend Sunday school or Hebrew school?
I attended Sunday school at what was then the Euclid Avenue Temple, which is now the Fairmount Temple.
Mm-hmm.
They change their name as they move.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They,
And what kind of interactions did your family have with the Jewish community?
not very much.
Mm-hmm.
Not very much.
How about with the Gentile community?
My dad worked long hours. He was working 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
We only had one time. We only had one car. My mother didn't know how to drive, and it was mostly a neighborhood. Just close neighbors on each side.
Mm-hmm.
We had a family by the name of Valentine on one side, Mrs. Daig on the other side.
And what happened when you graduated from high school? You decided to go to college, and where
Well,
did you
I
decide
graduated
to go?
from high school in 1940,
Mhm.
and my folks had already decided to move to Dallas. Actually, my dad had already moved.
What made them decide that?
Well, the weather in Cleveland was bad, my mother had arthritis, and business was lousy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was really on his way to San Antonio, where he had a friend, but he stopped off here and didn't get any farther.
Mm-hmm.
And
So-
he bought a drugstore. I stayed in Cleveland for the last semester of high school while we were here. And they left me the car. So here I was, 16 years old, driving around in a car on ice and snow.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good. I was very active in the temple. I used to drive down a couple of days a week during the weekdays. We had a lot of activity.
Mm-hmm. And where did they live when they first came to Dallas?
Well, they actually rented a room in an area. Rosie, I'll tell you the street, Vivian Street. You know where Vivian is?
Mm-hmm.
It's over in East Dallas. Off of East Grand Avenue, toward the lake. And when I moved down here, we rented a house
Mm-hmm.
on Miller Avenue, which is also in East Dallas. And when I started college, we were living on Miller Avenue, and you can at that time you could take the streetcar from Miller Avenue in Henderson and go right to SMU.
Okay, so you enrolled at SMU.
Yeah.
And what did you study? What was your major?
I majored in accounting,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a minor in industrial management. I started out in 1940 and I graduated in 1943.
That was fast.
Well, I went to summer school 1 year and I took extra hours, 18 hours instead of 15 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and got out early.
And what were you involved in any kind of extracurricular activities in college?
Well, I was president of the Jewish Students Association and the Menorah Society at that time, which had a meeting room in Dallas Hall, on the ground floor of Dallas Hall.
How many Jewish students were there at SMU in those days?
I suspect that there were about as many then as there are now. I would say probably 100 and maybe 150.
Mm-hmm.
They really haven't, there were only, by the SMU total student enrollment was about 1,600.
And of that, about 150
Yeah,
were Jewish. So that was a pretty large.
Maybe I'm
percentage.
exaggerating, but I may be exaggerating some. But there was enough that at that time there was a Jewish fraternity, there was a Jewish sorority, and there were some students. A lot of Dallas people went to SMU. They didn't go away as much as they do now.
And what did you decide to do after college?
Well, I applied to law school.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the University of Texas Law School. But one semester I worked in the airplane industry. I was building airplanes.
Oh, where was that?
Chance Vought here in Grand Prairie. The part that I was doing was auditing bills payable to see that we were getting our proper discounts.
Mm-hmm. Was that during the war?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one summer I worked in Dad's store, and I went to summer school one summer, so that kept me pretty busy.
Kept you busy, yes.
Yeah.
And once you got to Austin?
Well, I didn't.
You didn't go to Austin?
Yeah, I did, but that's ahead of our time.
Okay.
Because I graduated from SMU.
Right.
And I went from SMU to Northwestern University Law School in Chicago.
Ah.
Somehow or other I saw some scholarship they had, and I wrote a letter, and I wanted to see a little change of scenery. And so I went to law school in Chicago for a year.
Mm-hmm. You went to Chicago for a year. What made you decide not to stay in Chicago?
Well, I don't know. I guess I got homesick. I guess I got tired of Chicago. I didn't like the cold weather.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I really wasn't going to live in Chicago. If I wasn't going to live in Chicago, there was no sense staying in Northwestern particularly.
Right.
And I found an article about a scholarship at the University of Texas at law school. And so I wrote to them and I got the scholarship. In fact, there's a book been written. There's an exchange of correspondence between the dean of the Northwestern Law School, Dean Leon Green, and the dean of the Texas Law School, Dean McCormick. And I believe they're brothers-in-law. But anyway, they had a series of letters, and the books had been published. And one day, Morty Rudberg comes in and hands me a photocopy of one of the chapters, because it's about me. They're having correspondence. Dean Green is saying that I've got an application, or the other way around, I guess. Dean Green is writing to McCormick's writing to Dean Avery. They got an application for a scholarship. It was this Alexander fellow. What do they know about him?
Oh.
And he gave me a good recommendation. He said we were looking forward to him being on the law review. But if he has to go to some other school, I'd like nothing better than go to the University of Texas. That was interspersed in some of their more liberal letters. And somewhere, I bought the book from Amazon and I can't find it. But,
Now, what did you think about Texas once you got there, the school, the law school?
oh, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we walked everywhere.
Right.
I lived several miles from the law school. Walked over there in the morning, walked back for lunch, walked back to the law school again, and stayed around there. Sometimes we stayed there at night. We kept a window open so we could get back into the building, get into the library. That's the old law building. It's no longer there. It's been torn down.
And when you graduated from law school, what did you decide to do then?
Well, it was hard to find a job. There really weren't a lot of jobs available. One of the reasons there weren't jobs available is there wasn't any office space for people in Dallas. Dallas was filled up. And eventually I went into partnership with a fellow by the name of Robert F. Roberts, who worked for about a year for a law firm. And we found a little office in a building called the Lacey Building, next door to Neiman Marcus on Commerce Street. And we practiced there for a couple of years. And Roberts got involved in oil deals, and he eventually left the practice of law, went in the oil business, ended up in Shreveport.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up doing very well. He had a public company.
What year was it when you went into practice?
Okay. I was licensed in March of 1946. That's 62 years ago.
In some cities, there was still prejudice against Jewish lawyers and Jewish doctors in those days. Did you find that was true in Dallas?
I think that was probably true in the major firms. I don't think the major firms were hiring very many Jewish lawyers. Thompson and Knight had a Jewish partner, Alex Weisberg. But it was really after the war that Jewish lawyers were able to get in. I remember one of my fraternity brothers in Houston was the first Jewish boy ever hired by a major law firm down there.
And what kind of cases were your main interests in those days?
Whatever we could get. No, we were doing a lot of commercial work, corporations, commercial collections. We did a little of everything. Did a little criminal work, but mostly DWI, but quit doing that after about 4 or 5 years. It's very hard to do both. It's a lot of middle of the night.
Right. You didn't want the criminals waking you up at night. And let's go back a little bit and talk about what was the Jewish community like in Dallas in those days?
Well, we left out a lot. You didn't ask me anything about my mother.
Right. Okay, let's talk about your mother.
Well, she was born in Dayton. Her father was he was a tailor, and worked for big tailoring companies. And they had a lot of kids. She had a younger sister, an older sister, and a brother. And the tragedy of the family was that her mother died in childbirth in 1903, leaving a little baby. And so my grandfather put all the kids in the Cleveland Jewish Orphan Zone. And they were there for about 4 years until he remarried and took them out. And that was a pretty common proceeding. My mother was a legal secretary. She got married when she was about 23 or so, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Rumor has it that Dad picked her up at a bus stop, but I don't know if that's true or not. Could well be true. Now, what was the Dallas Jewish community like?
From the time that you moved here.
Okay, when I moved here, I attended Temple Emmanuel, which is quite similar to the Temple in Cleveland. Smaller, but that's similar nature.
Were there other synagogues other than Temple in those days?
Yes, there were 3. There was Shereth Israel, Tifereth Israel, there were 4, Gudasaka.
Mm-hmm. And Ruth tells me that you were active in your fraternity, Sammy.
Yeah, I'm the national historian.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know anything, ask me. I'll tell you I don't know.
For a long time?
Well, I suppose I've held some kind of national office in that organization since 1940-something or other.
Mm-hmm. That's a long time.
Hmm?
That's a
Yeah,
long
I've been
time.
the national secretary, I've been on the board, I've been endowment fund trustee. I was late now because I was on the phone talking to one of their people.
Can you tell us a little bit about the organization?
Well, it's a Jewish fraternity that's become somewhat non-Jewish. It had a chapter at SMU. Some of the first people I met in Dallas were at trying to think whether there was another congregation called Anshe Shafard. And the Romanian Shul. And I may have gone to a meeting there of the AZA one time. I think I met Leon Nagin there, but I wasn't much interested in it.
Let's talk a little bit more about your professional life then. You mentioned that your partner left your.
Yeah, well, that's Bob Roberts.
And then what did you do? You continued by yourself?
Yeah, I continued by myself, and then I met Arthur Goldberg and Ned Fritz, and we formed a partnership. Fritz Goldberg and Alexander, which dates back to 1951. In fact, just recently somebody sent me a little framed copy of our original announcement, which I didn't have.
Nice.
And we were in a building called the Reserve Loan Life Building, 505 North Irving. It's now part of the Baptist Church. And then we became tenants. In fact, we became the first tenants in the Fidelity Union Life Building. We were there before the insurance company was, because they finished out some of the small space first. And we were, Ned Fritz and I got at odds over a client, the nature of a client. I was representing a loan company which was going national. He was busy suing the loan sharks, so we were on opposite sides of an issue, and we decided it would be best that we split up. So it ended up with Arthur Goldberg and I. And we later hired a fellow right out of SMU Law School, Jim Baker, who later became a judge at the Supreme Court, Texas Supreme Court. And Arthur and I were together until he retired 20 years ago. In the meantime, we'd taken in some other people. And the name changed from time to time, from Goldberg Alexander, Goldberg Alexander Baker, Goldberg Alexander Baker and Sullivan. And various people came and left. And Arthur, then we moved from downtown to Preston Royal. I found an office out there. I said if I ever was going to move out of downtown, that's where I was going to move. And luckily I found an available office at the time. And we were in that building for over 20 years, maybe 25 years.
Now, where were you living at the time?
Okay. Well, I was living in various places. I lived with my folks, then I had an apartment on Binkley. In fact, I just went by and looked at the apartment last week because SMU's been buying and tearing down these apartments, and I thought the Bush Library was going in my bedroom. But I looked at it, and the building is still there. That part has not been torn down yet. Most everything around it has. And I had a roommate, Goldie Levi. The apartment was brand new, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, all utilities furnished, $200 a month. Front entrance, back entrance.
What kind of things did you do for amusement and entertainment in those days?
Well, we had a lot of parties, dances, various other kinds of parties. I went to see some plays. I taught Sunday school in South Boulevard. Most of my students have turned out pretty well.
You keep in contact with them?
I see, well, you know, I wasn't much older than they were.
Right.
So I was going to SMU, just out of law school, and I taught the 8th grade. But you see what Jewish life was like in Dallas. Jewish life was somewhat segregated. Generally speaking, the Reform and the Orthodox didn't have much to do with each other. Although on the holidays, the temple got out earlier, and we would go over to the park where Sheriff Israel was. And the kids from Sheriff Israel walked out of the synagogue, were congregating in the park. And one of my early friends here, we used to play poker at 19.5 Pearl Street. You know where 19.5 Pearl Street is?
No.
Do you know where 19.5 Pearl Street is?
Possibly. Tell us.
It's the house next door to the Andrews grocery store.
1921 North Pearl.
Yeah, this was 19 and a half.
Probably.
It was a pool hall, not pool hall, it's like a poker place.
And who were the friends that you played poker with?
Renegades, Reuben Anders, Harry Konigsberg. Most of the guys at that time are deceased.
How did you meet your lovely wife?
Well, this baby, she was only 12 years old,
Something like that.
something like that. I ran across her.
Mhm.
Then our paths parted for 10 years or so. And we meet at the weekend at a wedding or something?
What?
Did we meet at a wedding?
At Donna Ross, Donna Israel and Andrew Ross, Ray Israel's daughter.
We're gonna get you telling this.
Tell us more. Tell us the truth.
He had come to the wedding with his roommate upstairs. Not his roommate, but a friend. And she became angry with him during the evening and left. So we sat at the table and talked for a long time.
Are you speaking of Dorothy?
What, Dorothy?
Well, you know what I did for Dorothy.
Yes, I know. I think they like that story.
I got her to her wedding. The person who was supposed to take her to the wedding didn't show up. And she lived in her apartment in Portsmouth. Had nobody to get to her wedding, so I drove her to the wedding.
And
Yeah.
Not my wedding, he did.
Okay, so you met at a wedding?
That's what she says.
Uh-huh.
I knew who he was, but we did not date until we saw each other at the wedding of Donna Israel and Andy Ross, whom I had introduced in New York when I lived there. Donna had come to study nursing, and she got a job at New York Hospital as a nurse, and she was looking for some people to go out with, and I suggested that she go to a party in upstate New York, and she met Andy Ross, and they became friends, and they were married, and now they're grandparents. So that's the story of how we met at a wedding.
And did he immediately ask you out?
Well, he asked me out, and we did go out. And he also, I was living in New York for 9 years, and he came to New York with Arthur on a business trip, and he came to see me very late at night one time, and I was not happy with his hour. So I suggested we go to the Russian tea room to eat, which was one of my favorite places. So that we did, and came back to my apartment, and he looked around and said, "You can't afford to live here. Do you have a sugar daddy?" To which I replied, "No."
It was an accurate assessment of the resale values.
But anyway, I continued to live in New York for quite some time. And when I came back to Dallas finally in 1972, I believe, then we did go out more seriously, but he also had another girlfriend. So it was a strenuous time sharing him with someone else. But finally his parents decided that he should marry me. His mother knew that she wasn't going to live too much longer, and she wanted somebody who would take care of him. So they nominated me, and I became his new mother. Is that correct, Jim?
Well, no,
I don't think so.
We need to find out.
Well, you ask your father if he thought it was a good idea if you married me, and he replied in his usual forthright manner, yes.
That I may have done. But,
You did.
But I don't, well, I don't remember,
Mhm.
don't remember that.
So you had a long courtship?
Hmm.
20 years.
Something like 3 years. And then when we decided to get married, we did it very quickly in 4 weeks. And Ruth, knowing what a bookworm that Jimmy was, Ruth and Dave gave us a book on contemporary sculpture, a coffee table book for a wedding present, which we still have. But I think that was very interesting because they knew what a bookworm Jimmy was.
Well, where did you live when you first got married?
We lived
And
in
the-
Preston Royal, in the duplexes that face Preston Road at the tollway.
And this was what year about?
1975.
You know, the buildings are still, duplexes are still there.
Mm-hmm.
They've converted them into condominiums. And when they converted them into condominiums, I decided I didn't want to buy the condominium. So we went out and bought a house, which we lived in for about how long? 20 years? 10? Anyway, it's on George Street, not very far from here.
Mm-hmm. You've been actively involved in many, many organizations in Dallas. Can you tell us about some of them?
Well, once upon a time in the Young Democrats, but I don't qualify anymore. Junior Chamber of Commerce, Jewish Federation. I was charter member of B'nai B'rith Lodge and eventually president. I was president of the Jewish Historical Society.
How did you become interested in the Historical Society?
Well, I was interested in history.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you a little dissertation, if you like, on the history of the Jewish community of Cleveland. And of Dallas, as far as it goes. And let's see, I've been involved in American Jewish Committee. I've been a member there almost since the founding of the Dallas chapter.
Which organization is closest to your heart?
Well, the B'nai B'rith has about disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Not very active. I guess I spend more time now mostly telling people what to do with the Sigma Alpha Mu. I'm telling them up there what to do, and they of course don't do it. But I spend some time that you don't see, Ruth, with the Jewish Historical Society. I'm not as active with organizations as I used to be. You know, you get to a certain age and it gets to be kind of a nuisance. Although I've got another meeting after this one today.
Okay. How do you think the city of Dallas has changed since you first came to live here?
It's gotten too big, too much traffic. I think it's changed. I think it's changed politically.
In what way?
I think it's more liberal than it used to be. Minority groups have much more influence than they used to, because they used to have none.
What about the Jewish community? How has that changed during the same time period?
Well, do you think the rabbi of one of the congregations would say to his congregants, would the gentlemen please remove their head coverings as this is a Reformed congregation? I don't think they would say that today. I think the Jewish community is a lot more active than it was. If you look back to see the kind of fundraising that was done for the Federation, you'll find out they would gather $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 in a year. That would be about it. And I noticed they went over 10 million this year.
Right.
Of course, the population has increased a great deal. My recollection is there were about 8,000 Jews when I moved to Dallas. I guess we're somewhere around between 50 and 60,000.
Did you have any mentors when you were in school? Anybody that you looked on as a role model?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
What, professionally, what was the most interesting facet of the law for you?
Well, you know, we really didn't handle any big cases. We handled a lot of little cases. I did, however, get to the Supreme Court of the United States once. Lost, we got there. I won in the federal district court here. I won in New Orleans in the circuit court, 2-1. And I lost in the Supreme Court of the United States, 9-0.
But you got there.
They were waiting for my case, mine and some similar type cases. They were waiting to establish some law, and they did it. But a lot of lawyers never get a case in the Supreme Court.
That's true.
And I used to be more active in politics. I was precinct chairman a couple of times. I used to go to the district convention. I went to the National Convention twice, 1968 and 1972. 68 was the exciting one.
Yes.
I was right in the middle of things. I was staying at the convention hotel.
Was Chicago?
Chicago, that was the Hubert Humphrey convention. And I did things that when I reflect on them now are stupid. I went out in the park and took pictures. Could have just as easily been hit on the head.
Protesters.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, the protesters.
That was the
Yeah,
Abbey
yeah.
Hoffman days.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw people in the hotel lobby bloody. But I wasn't, it didn't bother me at that time, but I think back on it. Anyway.
Is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, this is not very exciting.
He said he would give us a whole history of Texas Jewish history, Dallas Jewish history. That's what he said over
About what?
Texas Dallas history.
Oh, you've been involved with the Texas Jewish Historical
Oh yeah, I was
Society
a director
as well.
I was a director for many years.
Yes, can you tell us about that?
That's an excellent organization. Does a terrific job. Its problem is that its members keep getting older, and the younger ones don't come in. But and it's really small town oriented. In fact, I think right now there's only one director from Dallas. And
Jane Guzman.
hmm?
Is it Jane Guzman?
I don't think she's a director.
Yes.
I think someday I don't know. But no, I think that's fine. If I were up to more traveling, I would continue to go to their meetings. I do like their meetings. And but I think Dallas does a pretty good job. I think we've gotten a little away from our original purpose, which was local history. We've gotten into kind of national, international, philosophical stuff. But
Have you visited the new facility?
yeah, I did. I donated the money for one of the rooms there.
Yes.
Forgot which one.
The main office.
The main office. Okay.
Mhm.
And I need to get over there and see more of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I need to figure out what to do with my memorabilia. We have no family to leave it to.
Well, take a look at our archives now because we have wonderful, wonderful shelving
Climate control.
and climate controlled. It's really state of the art. It's wonderful. And our new archivist is fantastic.
The other one was pretty good.
She was, yes.
Yeah. This one's beyond.
You're right. You're lucky to find him.
We were indeed,
And our director, Debbie Tobias.
yes. Okay. We thank you very much.
Go ahead. This is it is May. It's May 29th, and we're sitting here and with Jim Alexander, and he's going to supplement from his earlier oral history for us. So go ahead.
I was going to comment on the fact that I had a hand in starting or doing the legal work and getting into existence of several organizations in Dallas. I was a founder and a charter member of Temple Shalom, and I'm still an associate member. I never left Temple Emmanuel, but I helped them get started. And I was one of the incorporators of the temple. And it was kind of interesting because the people who started it all wanted to be incorporators. Usually when you start a corporation, you have one incorporator, maybe three. But I had maybe 50 or 60 people came down to my office to sign the charter. And they'll show their names, show up as charter members. And I also had a hand in starting a congregation that no longer exists, I believe called Beth Israel, which was started near the White Rock Lake area after the war, in a modest income area. I think their assets went to, I'm not sure, but I believe they went to Akiba. So I actually formed two congregations in Dallas. Probably nobody's done that. I was an incorporator of the Texas Jewish Historical Society, which started out with an earlier name. I guess the Dallas Jewish Archives.
Mm-hmm.
And when I became president, it kind of occurred to me that it's hard for a person to be a member of an archive. And looked around and found that most organizations were called historical societies. And so we adopted that name, incorporated under that name, and went forward from there. And I did the original legal work and getting that started and getting their tax exemption. That's some of the papers I just gave you today. I also got called in by Jerry Beer when she was starting what's now the Vogel Alcove, Jewish Coalition for the Homeless. Whoever was handling it pooped out and didn't finish, so I, at her request, came in and finished the legal work and getting it started and got them a tax exemption. And that's turned out to be quite a successful organization, now known as the